Vadric Astral Archmage is a 3 mana cost Izzet, red, blue and 1 generic Spellslinger Storm commander that is trying to reduce the casting costs of instants and sorceries to cast really big, expensive ritual spells and combo off in a form of stormy fashion. He utilizes the Night and Day werewolf theme. So when it comes into play, it becomes day. And whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, you put a +1/+1 counter on him. So he begins like a 1/2, but then he steadily grows. And instant and sorcery spells you cast cost X less to cast, where X is Vadric's power. So when you just have him in play, he will reduce everything by 1. And as he grows bigger and bigger, eventually you will make some of these very strange, gimmicky, not really rituals, but you will make them into rituals and card at the same time. So for example, this Inspiring Tinkering for 1 red and 4 generic, really unplayable for cEDH 5 mana, exile the top 3 cards of your library. Until end of your next turn, you may play those cards. So that's like drawing 3 cards, and you're creating 3 treasure tokens. So if you're able to pump up Vadric's power to like 4, you're only paying 1 red mana for Inspiring Tinkering, which means it's draw 3, create 3 treasures for only 1 red mana. That's a perfect ritual for a Storm strategy, because when you're playing Storm, you want to have as much card draw and mana production rituals as possible, and preferably both into the same card. Jeska's Will is the number 1 example, because that is usually both a ritual and a card draw without the actual use of the commander, but in this case it becomes better. Frantic Search, if you reduce the casting cost, will become a ritual as you're untapping 3 lands, but if you're paying less than 3 mana, then yeah, it's a ritual suddenly. Pirate's Pillage is another really gimmicky example, very casual, can't play this in cEDH except in decks like this, so for 1 red and 3 generic a total of 4, but if your Vadric has a power of 3, it's down to just 1 red mana. So discard a card as an additional cost, that's not really a huge problem, draw 2 cards and then create 2 treasure tokens, which ultimately means, once again, that for 1 red mana you draw 2 and generate 2 mana, so it's both card draw and ritual at the same time. If we don't like our hand, we can just pay 1 red mana to throw it away and get a new hand for only 1 red mana. Invert, search your library for an instant, card and or sorcery card, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle your library for only blue-red if your commander is a 4 power creature. Big Score, we've actually seen another version of this already, just a different name. 4 mana, 1 red, actually, yeah, 1 red mana after reductions, discard a card, draw 2 cards, create 2 treasure tokens. It's perfect for this commander. Like, if we would have had cards in the cEDH format that was just 1 red mana, draw 2, generate 2 treasures, they would be overpowered and ban worthy. And currently, the Big Score is very terrible, but the commander is making it into a busted card. The synergy is absolutely amazing. We also have ways to boost up Vadric during the Storm run if he's a little bit too weak, because sometimes it doesn't become night and day in a changing way too frequently. So how night and day actually works is that if someone is casting, let's see how it goes here, 2 spells on a turn, it becomes day. If no one is casting anything, just cast 0 spells, it becomes night. And it has to shift between those back and forth. Now in a 4-pod game, it has a lot of opportunities to actually trigger and change from night to day. So night and day in cEDH is actually kinda good. However, it's sometimes not working out for you. Sometimes everyone is just casting 1 spell and just passing turn, and it never changes, so you have to be the one that changes it from night to day. But sometimes that's also a little bit tricky depending on what you have in your hand. And then we have cards like this, Sudden Breakthrough. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains first strike on the end of turn. Very casual, but when you're utilizing your commander's power, it's actually quite good, because this will help you basically cast everything I've showcased almost for free. And this one is actually completely for free once your commander has a power of 3. So you have to pay 2 life for it, but you draw 2 cards and proliferate, which means you're gonna grow your commander even more afterwards. That's really good. If you grow your commander a little bit too much, like to a very big Voltron stage with various tricks, you can cast Stroke of Genius, where X is really big. Basically just paying 1 blue mana to draw a whole bunch of cards, depending on Vadric's power basically. Shatter Skull Smashing, similar thing. Not card draw, but killing up to 3 things potentially. Drown in Dreams, also an X spell, so you could potentially cast this really big, and you get to mill at the same time. This is great because once you're on red, you're on Underworld Breach as well. So Drown in Dreams, milling you, will fuel your Underworld Breach, so to say. You just better make sure that you have your breach in your hand if you're gonna do this. However, don't worry, we have Past in Flames, another great red card that you can, very similar to Sevin's Reclamation, you can cast it from your graveyard for its flashback cost, and in this case, if Vadric has a power of 4, you're just paying 1 red mana for that Past in Flames. That is absolutely amazing, and then you can sit and cast things from your graveyard, similar to just like if you had an Underworld Breach in play, so to say, kinda. So how do we actually win? What is like the final effect that's gonna win the game? We have showcased a bunch of ways to draw cards, accumulate mana, but what's the finisher? So we have this really cool card inside this deck called Reiterate. I hope I pronounced that correct. It's a 6 mana fork with buyback. However, with your commander, if he has a power of 4, which isn't impossible to actually achieve, it just costs 2 red mana. That's pretty good. And then you get it back to your hand still. And then you just need a ritual. Like any ritual will actually do the job. Like even Desperate Ritual, a very tiny, simple and easy ritual that a lot of cEDH decks actually play. Desperate Ritual will only work if you're able to reduce the casting cost of by Reiterate down to just 2 red mana. So you need to sometimes have bigger rituals like Sitting Song. Yes, will, depending on how much cards your opponent have in their hand. Also, by the way, you're going to exile your entire library if you do this. But that's fine, usually. You don't die by continuously exiling an empty library, but just bear in mind that if an opponent has you draw a card, you lose the game here. On the other hand, you can just respond with various tricks. I mean, at this point you have infinite mana already, so if someone forces you to draw a card, you can probably win in instant speed above that forced card draw. But some spells here were already rituals to begin with as well. For example, Inspire and Tinkering will also work with Reiterate if your Reiterate is reduced by 4. And once you have infinite mana, you just cast a Lightning Bolt and cast Reiterate infinitely on that Lightning Bolt, doing infinite damage. It's a very cool, typical red way of winning the game, like in the old days. But we also have the Thassa's Consult, or red version of Thassa's Consult, in the forms of Dualcaster Mage and Heat Shimmer. 6 mana, but if you have your commander, you will reduce the casting cost of Heat Shimmer, so that helps out a tiny bit at the very least. But once again, we also have Underworld Breach, Lion's Eye Diamond and Brain Freeze, so if you don't have your commander, you don't really have access to your commander, it's not really worth casting your commander, you can still win without the commander, and that's actually really good. We're gonna talk about that importance later, but with Underworld Breach, Lion's Eye Diamond and Brain Freeze, you can mill out yourself to something like 10 cards remaining, and then mill out your 3 other opponents to 0 cards, and then resolve a Wheel of Fortune, forcing your opponents to basically deck themselves, but because you kept 10 cards remaining in your library, you're not gonna die. So this is also a very clean, efficient way to win the game. It is honestly a really cool commander that can utilize some really big spells like Seagate Restoration to great extent and really create cool synergies. But let's talk about that thing I wanted to talk about, because, well, Seagate Restoration is actually a really bad example in this case, because it could be just a land, so don't worry that much about this one. But I wanna emphasize that Big Score and similar cards like Big Score that I've showcased so far are in general bad. So if you don't have your commander in play, which could actually happen, Dranat Magistrates, counterspells, etc, then Big Score is rather bad. Like, there's a risk you're ending up with some dead cards, or not the best cards you could have in your hand if you don't have your commander in play. So a great way to actually interact with this deck is to basically kill the commander over and over. Now we did have Underworld Breach as a backup if our commander would be removed by interaction, or let's say there's a Draenei Magistrate in play. However, in the case of a Draenei Magistrate, that's like a really good card versus this deck, because it shuts down Underworld Breach and a lot of those exilic top cards of your library effects, and it shuts down your commander. So Draenei Magistrate is a very menacing card against this deck. So yeah, Shatterskull Smashing, really key. Thank God we're playing Lightning Bolt and some other X damage spells that can destroy Draenei etc. Besides having these really big punchy spells with X or really high CMC cost, you also have a Voltron commander here actually. If the game just goes too long and you're flipping between night and day a little bit too much, Vadrik actually starts to grow in punching power. Like, he's not gonna be a great Voltron commander, but eventually it could actually start having an impact, depending on how the game pod actually plays out and such. Like, you're not playing a lot of like creatures effects and such. But making him bigger, increasing your Voltron potential, isn't actually that bad either, because something like this, Cloud of Dominus, is actually boosting his power, which is reducing the casting cost of your spells. Now this is giving you Shroud and Haste. Haste's good, that's good for our Voltron plan. But remember, the main reason you play this is because Shroud, actually the main reason is the +2/+2 basically, that's really key, that's very good, but Shroud protects him. We were really commander centric, so this is surprisingly good. Similar to how this is surprisingly good, even though it's like a Voltron thing, but it's reducing your casting cost of stuff, and that's good. So you could actually include more equipments, like you could play a few other things that could help out here and there. In the end, he's a little bit open and you can tweak him quite a lot depending on how you want him to flow. Like, I can see a use of equipments. However, bear in mind that too many equipments will make your deck clunky. Like, you want to have all of those really free to cast or just 1 mana cost rituals that also give you card draw. You want to have a lot of those. And you also want to have a lot of ways to make sure that your commander gets into play, stays into play, and gets to cast those 1 mana cost draw card ritual cards. Now it really sounds like you need a lot of things for this to actually work out. But you need something that boosts his power. You need one of these big score effects. You need some rituals and some other cool cards in your hand for it to flow. The truth is, it's actually quite consistent. You just need to get your commander into play. He will grow by himself in a turn cycle, a little bit, and you don't need him to grow that much. Only increasing his power by 2 will make Big Score cost 1 red mana only. And Desperate Ritual and Sudden Breakthrough is already 1 red mana just by having your commander in play. So you don't need that much. Like, you could just have Big Score and your commander in play, cast Big Score, and just draw into something and see what happens. With a lot of various tutors, the consistency also increase. Like, 1 blue mana for an intuition, find key cards like Past in Flames, cast Past in Flames from the graveyard. Like, this is pretty good. If your commander has power enough, it will just be blue, red, and you've resolved Past in Flames and resolve an intuition as well. You also get to play these big spells like Mystic's Mastery. If your graveyard is big enough and you resolve this thing, boom, you win the game. Now it's usually a very bad card because it's quite expensive. Like, without the overload, it is still 4 mana for like a very weird Eternal Witness, which isn't that good. But if you have a commander in play, it's just 1 red mana for the first thing, and if you have your commander in play, you want to pay 3 red, you overload it for only 3 red mana. If you've been following me on this YouTube channel, you know that I love instant speed win attempts. So a lot of the cards we actually looked at are sorcery speed. However, complete the circuit. Now convoke, which means you can tap your commander to pay for the blue pip. If your commander has power enough, this is basically free to cast. That is absolutely amazing. You may cast sorcery spells this turn as though they had flash. Now this is a little bit weird because normally with convoke decks you want to be very heavy on creatures normally. Like, you could cast complete the circuit in any form of other deck by just having a whole bunch of creatures. The problem is that when you're playing complete the circuit, you want to have a lot of sorcery spells that you can cast in instance. Now this is the perfect commander to utilize this card, because we're reducing the casting cost of the generic mana, the 5 there, and with Convoke, yeah, you're removing that blue pip. Absolutely amazing. The second part of it is, or the third part, if you're including Convoke, when you next cast an instant, that was a little bit weird worded. When you next cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell twice. You may choose new targets for the copies. So if you cast Completeless Circuit for, let's say, free, no mana whatsoever, and you cast Big Score afterwards for just 1 red, you basically get to draw 2, generate 2 treasures, and do all of this in instant speed. Sorry, you're making 2 copies of Big Score, so you're gonna draw 6 cards and create 6 treasures. And now things like Inspiring Thinking, that's a sorcery, can't do this in instant speed, but because of Complete the Circuit, you can still cast things in instant speed and potentially win above someone else win. That is really good. That means you can sit and just wait patiently until the timing window suddenly appears. That is really good. When your opponents have basically tapped out, they have done stuff in an opponent's end step, and when there's a win on the stack and there's a bunch of counter spells that have been used trying to stop that win, then you can complete the circuit and go for it. We can even tutor for Complete the Circuit with Merchant Scroll. Now, I want to mention something here, that Completeless, like if you tutor for Complete the Circuit with your Merchant Scroll, the gig is up and your opponents are gonna know about it. So don't do Merchant Scroll into Complete the Circuit. Instead, try to Mystical Tutor for it and then try to draw a card afterwards and then cast Complete the Circuit and try to storm off and win from that point. All in all, if I'm gonna be honest, Vadric have actually surprised me. I have seen it win in very interesting board positions, and that's good. When you're playing Storm, you usually have a lot of different ways to actually accumulate a form of win con somehow. You're on a really low amount of colors, only 2, Izzet, blue-red, but the CMC cost of this guy is only 3, so you get him into play quite efficiently. Not that terrible. The deck that we've been looking at has been brought to us by Shalom Saki or Sak. As always, link in the description below of the video if you want to take a look at card by card exactly how Sak have put this deck together. But also, in the description below of the video, I will include 2 gameplay videos that we played on the cEDH TV gameplay channel, where Sak is actually piloting this thing. So if you want to see it's actually performing in action and a little bit of like the thought process behind how to operate it, you can go and watch. And also I will leave those up there in the top right corner if you want to take a look as well. I hope you enjoyed this little deck tech video with Izzet Vadric. It's really cool to see dual color commanders actually performing good, but we need more of that. We can't just have 3, 4 and 5 color commanders only performing. So it's kind of cool to see that. Also, there's a bunch of potential upgrades this commander could get if Wizards of the Coast are printing more spells that would be bonkers if you reduce the casting costs. Thank you for watching, take care guys, and I'll see you in the next video.